Our session today will be demand, supply, and the market mechanisms. So a market is simply a system in which the buyers and the sellers transact either a service or a commodity which can come in terms of a good. So we, in this market, are supposed to settle for a price and quantity that must be sold or bought. So the sellers and the buyers may be individuals, they may be firms, they may be factories, they may be dealers, they may perhaps be agents. And so a market is simply a place that can either be virtual. It's simply a place or a system or a platform where buyers and sellers will engage. So the features of a market are that, number one, a market needn't be a particular physical, tangible place. No. It is simply where buyers and sellers come into contact with each other. So like we are right now, it is a marketplace for tutorials. Market demand. The theory of demand simply explains the relationship that exists between demand and various factors that affect it. So in economics, demand is backed by the ability and willingness to pay. So a statement on demand for a product should include the quantity purchased, price of the commodity, the period, and the place of demand, the 4 Ps. So the law of demand, therefore, can be illustrated using a graph. The law of demand simply states that a higher price is usually accompanied by a lower quantity demanded. A lower price, conversely, is accompanied by a higher quantity demanded, holding all other factors constant. We use a Latin term, ceteris paribus. So a demand equation is usually downsloping because of the inverse relationship that exists between demand and quantity demanded. So demand function is given by price A minus BQ. So this A stands for the intercept, where it's cutting the p-axis. And the B is our slope. So demand can be given as follows in terms of A minus BQ. Demand can be given as follows in terms of A minus BP. So our A is called the y-intercept. The y-intercept is simply the cutting point on the y-axis. And the B is the slope, which is simply a gradient. So collectively, we have this as a demand curve, which follows the law of demand, simply stating that if the price is increased from P1 to P2, what happens? The quantity demanded will decrease from Q1 to Q2. So this holds for a normal good. Now, there are several factors that affect demand. What are some of the factors that affect demand? So let's start with what you know, what you don't know. Okay, what are some of the factors that affect demand? Number one. Anyone? What are some of the factors that affect demand? Your demand for a particular good, what you eat, what you wear. What are some of the factors that will influence that? Yes, Sheffield. What are some of the factors that affect demand? Okay, let me start with a few. Number one, factors that affect demand include the price. So the price of a particular commodity will affect your demand. So the price of a service is one of the most significant factors that affects demand. So in general, as the price of a commodity decreases, demand will increase and vice versa. The other factor that affects demand is the income. So the level of income plays a very critical role in determining the purchasing power. So consequently, the demand for goods and services will be affected by your purchasing power, your income. So a high income generally will denote you buy huge quantities. The other factor that affects demand is consumer tastes and preferences. So preferences are constantly changing with time. So there's a shift in our tastes that can significantly impact our demand for certain particular goods and services, such as trends in fashion, cultural shifts, advertising influence, and consumer preferences. The availability of substitutes is also another factor that affects demand. So if there are close substitutes available, this simply means that we may switch what? Our demand. Consumer expectations, can somebody explain? So consumer expectations about the future prices, income, and product availability can also influence the current demand. For example, if consumers anticipate a future price may increase, so this may also increase their current demand, and they take advantage of lower prices. So if you are told that fuel is yet to go up, what will happen? You speculate demand, so you buy more. So this means expectations of the future will anticipate the demand. All right. What other factors do you think will affect the demand for a particular commodity? We have population, advertising, government policies, seasonal factors, and economic conditions. So these also will affect what? The demand. In what way will they affect demand? Let me elaborate. So population too has an effect on the demand for a particular commodity. For instance, in Lusaka, we know that the population size is high, and therefore high population gets to influence the demand for goods and services. In terms of also the content, if the distribution of wealth is high, there will be high demand. Also, the age distribution is an important factor. There are people who've actually gone into a study of demographics and population economics just to understand how the population can affect demand. Advertising and marketing are also other factors that affect demand. So when you have an effective marketing campaign, it will create awareness, hence the desire to influence people to buy. For instance, your map show that we just recently had here was highly turned up because of effective marketing campaigns. We also have government policies and regulations. These ones are also significant in the sense that when government puts on fiscal policies like taxes, regulations on certain products, they will affect how much people will buy and their buying behavior. Seasonal factors also may affect product demand. For instance, holidays, weather conditions, cultural events like the Nchwala, all these affect demand. We also have other factors that affect demand, like economic conditions that may come through, such as inflation, unemployment, interest rates. These may affect the pattern of the buyer's behaviors. So these are but some of the factors that affect demand. Are we together? So we also have factors that affect supply. What are some of the factors that affect supply? So supply, to start with, is upsloping. So whereas demand is downsloping, supply is upsloping. It is given by price is equal to A plus BQ. The only difference that the gradient here is positive. The intercept here cuts here. So our price and quantity are here. Okay. So the law of supply simply states that for any normal good, price increase from P1 to P2 will result into an increase in quantity supplied, simply because suppliers will be more willing to supply at a higher and favorable price. So there's a direct relationship between the price and the quantity supplied, whereas demand has a negative relationship or an inverse relationship. So suppliers like maize farmers here are more willing to supply maize when they hear that government has declared a good price, because the cost of their production and also will therefore be factored in. So what are some of the factors that affect supply? The price of the inputs. The inputs here, such as the raw materials, the labor, the energy, all these are being factored in. So the price of input will affect the supply. We also have technological advancements. These will increase production efficiency, hence reducing costs of production, thereby increasing the supply. Government regulations also have an impact on the supply of goods and services. When the regulations put to promote supply production, like taxation, standard compliance, and also licensing, these have an ability to affect business supply. Other factors will include weather, national disasters. So for instance, if the weather is conducive for production, like the rainy season, we have a lot of production that comes by. Natural disasters also may cause a disruption in supply. These, I don't know why they're called acts of God, also may come in terms of droughts and floods and damaged crops, hence disrupting what? Road networking and affecting supply. So these are some of the factors that affect supply. So we could add more to the factors that affect supply. Some of them would be as follows. We have changes in production costs. These changes in costs, such as wages, rent, utilities, can also impact supply. So if production costs rise, businesses may also reduce their supply. Expectations of the future prices. So suppliers also are expectant. If they hear that the prices will go up, they will hold supply now for a favorable future. Technological disruptions or technology itself affects supply. So if we have a technology-dependent supply, failures in technology will also bring back supply. Exchange rates also will affect the supply of certain goods and services. Political instability affects supply. So all in all, these are some of the factors that affect supply. Now, if left alone, consumer suppliers have irrational behavior. The consumers are always demanding for more. Consumers want more for less. Suppliers also want more money. So these two will meet at a point called equilibrium. Equilibrium is simply a point where demand meets supply. So this point here is called equilibrium. So we have two areas that you can see in there. There's one area which is called the consumer surplus. This is called the consumer surplus. There's also another area here which is called the producer surplus. So this is called the producer surplus. Together, these two areas give us what is called total surplus or the social welfare. So this is called the consumer surplus, which is given by half base times height. And this is called the producer surplus, which is given by half base times height. So together, collectively, this will give us a total surplus. So which can be calculated. For instance, here we have a 0, we have 10, we have 3 there, we have 5 there, and we have a 10 there. So the area of the consumer surplus, this is 5 and this is 10. So if we're going to calculate the differences in there, we have a 5 here and we have a 10. That's a distance from here to here, it's 5. From 0 to 10 is 10. Even here for the base, from here to here is still 10. From here to here, it's a 2. So half base times height, here we're going to have half. The base is 10. The height is what? 5. So half of 50, 25. Then this one also here, we're going to calculate the producer surplus, which is half. The base is still 10. The height is 2. So we're going to have a what? A 10. Then the total is what we call the total surplus, also social welfare. So the social welfare is simply when we add the two. Are we following so far? All together? So this is demand, which is simply given by A minus BQ. This is supply, which is simply given by A plus BQ. Are we following? Are we all together so far? So now how do we sketch these graphs? So if I have a demand function, for instance, A, which is 10 minus 2Q. How do we plot this? We'll put the letters on one side, the Q will be, it will cross on the other side, become a plus. Then we're going to now divide the intercepts. What number is below the P? Before the P, there's an invisible one. Here, before the Q, there's a visible 2. So 1 into 10, we get 10. 2 into 10, we get 5. So when we calculate that, it will cut here at what? 10, the P, and it will cut here at 5, the Q. So this is what we call our demand function. It is simply given by P is equal to 10 minus 2Q. Let's try another one. P is equal to what? 20 minus 0.2Q. Who wants to try? How do we sketch this? How do we sketch this? So we'll put the letters on one side. So we're going to have P plus 0.2 is equal to 20. So let's identify the intercepts. Here there's a 1. So 1 into 20 is 20. Here there's 0.2. 0.2 into 20 is 100. So we're going to draw the X or Y plane. Our P is here and our Q is there. We know demand is down sloping. So here on the P to cut at 20, and the Q to cut at 100. Then here this is a 0. So this is our demand function. Are you following? Let's try the supply. Supply is given by A plus BQ. There is a positive gradient there. So suppose we have 10 plus 2Q. We'll put the letters on one side. So this is 10 minus 2Q. P minus 2Q is equal to 10. So what letter is there? What number is there is 1. 1 into 10 is 10. 2 negative into 10, negative 5. So meaning our P is there and our Q is there. So to start from negative 5, then here to cut out 10. So this is our function, which is 10 plus 2Q. All right. You can also come in terms of what? This function here, maybe it will come as 100 plus 0.5 P. All right. So put the letters on one side. So this is Q minus what? 0.5 P is equal to 100. So there's an invisible 1 there. So 1 into 100 is 100. Negative 0.5 into 100, it is negative 200. So here, it will go upwards there. On the P, it will be negative 200. On the Q, it will cut at the cost of 100. This is still a supply function, which will be written as Q is equal to 100 plus 0.5 P. Okay. So how do we now plot? If you're given two equations, suppose the supply function, the demand function was given by 100 minus 2Q, and the supply function was given by 10 plus 3Q. So to start with, how do we plot these curves? We know that demand and supply. So we put the letters on one side. For demand, how do we sketch? The P plus 2Q is equal to what? 100. We put the letters on one side. So there's the 1 there. 1 into 100 is 100. 2 into 100 is 50. So the demand will cut where? Where it's P, it will cut at what? 100. Where it's Q, it will cut at what? 50. Then we go to the next one here. We put the letters on one side. So this will be what? P minus 3Q is equal to 10. There's a 1 there here. So 1 into 10 is 10. 3 into negative 3 into 10 is negative 3.33. So although we don't consider negative side, we are mainly considering here, this is negative 3.33 just for plotting purposes, but it's starting here at 10. Okay. All right, so we have this plotting there. So now we need to know the equilibrium. So we say that equilibrium, what happens? Demand should be equal to supply. So our demand was 100 minus what? 2Q. Our supply was 10 plus what? 3Q. So let's solve for Q at equilibrium. So the letters and the numbers will be on one side. So the 2Q will be this side, will be positive. And when we compute there, we're going to get 90 is equal to what? 5Q. So we divide both sides by 5, meaning our Q therefore will be 18. This is called our equilibrium quantity. Then we're going to substitute this in any of them. We have 10 plus 3Q. Where there's Q, we're going to put 18. So here we're going to have 3 times 18, which is 54. 54 plus 10 is going to be 64. So this is called our equilibrium price. Suppose we put it in the other one, which was 100 minus 2Q. Are we still going to get the same answer? Yes. So where there's Q, we're going to put what? 18. So this would be 100 minus 36, which will give us 64. So this is also our equilibrium price. So price is 64, we put 64 there. Quantity is 18, we put 18 there. So we know there are two graphs that we have there, the equilibrium price, the equilibrium quantity, and so we are now going to calculate the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So can somebody tell me between A and B, which one is the consumer surplus and which one is the producer surplus? So A is the consumer surplus. We can rewrite it there. The distance from here to here is 36. The distance from here to here is 18. So this is our consumer surplus, which is simply going to be half times the base times height. So here we're going to have our base is 18 and our height is 36. So here also, they're sharing the same base here to 18. Then here, the distance from here to here is 54. So producer surplus, therefore, is going to have base times height. So our base is 18 and our height is what? 54. So now we compute, multiplying these parts, we calculate the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So what we get as our consumer surplus? 18 times 36 divided by 2, times half, which is 324. And here it will be 18 times 54 divided by 2, which is 486. Then when we add these two, we get the total surplus, which is what? 810. But this is how we deal with equilibrium. This is how we deal with equilibrium. All right. So now, quick, can you remember from what we have discussed? Quick, can you remember from what we've discussed? So what is equilibrium? Equilibrium is simply a state in the market where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. What is elasticity of demand? What is income elasticity? What is cost price elasticity? What is a surplus? So just a quick, can you remember before we proceed? You must understand these key terminologies. So equilibrium is simply a state in the market where the quantity demanded matches the quantity supplied. It is a state where D is equal to S. Surplus in the context of economics refers to quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded at a given time, or quantity demanded is more than at a given time. Elasticity is simply the measure of responsiveness or sensitivity of one economic variable in relation to the other. So we have three types of elasticities that we're going to discuss. So what are the three types of elasticities? Okay, so elasticity of demand is simply it measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to changes in price. It is calculated as a percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price. So if we have a value greater than 1, we say it is elastic. If it was less than 1, it is inelastic. If it is equal to 1, it is what? Unit elastic. So we also have income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand is simply the elasticity that comes about due to changes in income. It is calculated as a percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. So if you have a positive income elasticity, we say it's a normal good. If you have a negative income elasticity, we say it's an inferior good. We also have cross price elasticity. Cross price elasticity, which is simply the responsiveness of quantity demanded in one product due to the changes in another product is calculated as the percentage change of product X over percentage change of product Y in terms of the quantity demanded and the price for the other good. So if you have a negative elasticity, it means a complementary good. If you have a positive elasticity, it means it is a substitute good. So elasticity of supply simply measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied due to the changes in the prices. Okay. So are we together? So we are going to go into some critical calculations. So before we go into critical calculations, a quick, can you remember on what has been discussed so far in terms of demand and supply? Then we will proceed. So a few questions so far on what we have done. That's a recap. Number one, would have questions like, what is the definition of demand? What is the definition of supply? So demand simply refers to the quantity of a product or service that consumers are willing and able to purchase at a given time and price. What are some of the factors that affect demand? We talked about price, income, consumer preferences, availability of substitutes, customer expectations, population, advertising, marketing, seasonal factors, and economic conditions. So how does price affect demand? So in general, as price of a product increases, the demand decreases and vice versa. So this is called the law of demand. Then in terms of supply, define supply. It simply says supply refers to the quantity of a product or service that producers are willing and able to sell at a given time and period. So what are the factors that affect supply? We talked about price of inputs, technological advancement, government regulations, weather, natural disasters, number of suppliers, changes in production costs, expectations of the future, technological disruptions, exchange rates, as well as political instability. So these are some of the questions that we looked at so far. What other things have we looked at so far? We've looked at issues to do with elasticity and equilibrium and surpluses. So explain equilibrium in a market is simply a state where quantity demanded by consumers matches the quantity supplied by producers, resulting into a stable price and quantity. What is a surplus? A surplus simply occurs when quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded at a given time. It leads into a buildup of unsold goods and services in the market. So what is elasticity? Is simply the measure of responsiveness or sensitivity of one economic variable to another, such as changes in price, income, and other related goods. What is elasticity of demand? Elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded due to changes in prices of a product. It helps us measure the sensitivity that consumers have to price changes. Okay. What else have we discussed so far? We've discussed income as well and how elasticity can be calculated. So what have we discussed? So we've discussed the following. How do we calculate elasticity of demand? So it's simply percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. So using the formula, elasticity of demand is simply equal to percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in what? In price. So if we have a value greater than 1, what does it imply? Greater than 1, it is elastic, meaning that quantity demanded is highly responsive to price changes. So what does it mean if we have 1.2 as elasticity of demand, meaning a 1.2% increase in price? A 1/4 increase in price will result into A 1% decrease in price will result into a 1.2% decrease in quantity demanded. That's what it means. What is income elasticity? This is simply the measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded due to changes in consumer income. It helps us determine whether the good is a normal or an inferior good. So how do we know that it is a normal good if we have a positive elasticity of income? How do we know it's an inferior good? We have a negative. All right. So how is income elasticity calculated? Is simply the percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in what? Income. So what happens if we have a positive income elasticity? It indicates that this is a what? A normal good. All right. What else have we discussed? So we've discussed a number of issues. We also mentioned to say when we're dealing with cross price elasticity and we get a negative, it is a complementary good. If it's a positive, it's a substitute good. So cross price elasticity measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of one good due to changes in another. So how is it calculated? It's percentage change in quantity demanded of product Y over the percentage change in X. All right. So any questions at this point before I proceed? Any questions at this point before I proceed? It is clear. All right. If it is clear, we now go to the computations of elasticity. Computations of elasticity. Talked about the equilibriums. Now we want to talk about the implications of and the applications of elasticity. So elasticity, we have three types. There's price elasticity of demand, cross, and income elasticity of demand. So for these, we have the percentages. So we start with price elasticity of demand. So it is given as percentage change when demanded over percentage change in price. So for given, suppose the price of bread rises from 4,000 to 6,000, causing the quantity demanded to reduce from 120 to 80. What is our elasticity of demand? So in this event, we're told that the price was initially what? 4,000. So P1 is 4,000 and P2 is 6,000, causing a decrease from Q1 was how much? 120 to 80. So elasticity of demand is equal to Q2 minus Q1 over what? Q1 divided by P2 minus P1 over P1, the original. So here we're going to simply say 6,000 minus 4,000 over what? 4,000 divided by 80 minus what? 120 over 120. So elasticity of demand, therefore, will be calculated to be 0.66 negative. Elasticity of demand is always negative because of the inverse relationship. So what is our comment in this case? Demand is inelastic. If it was more than one, it is elastic. So we can also calculate elasticity of demand using the demand function. So if you have demand given by A minus PQ, elasticity of demand is simply given by 1 over B times price over quantity. The B is a slope. So in the case that we're given a function like 10 minus 2q, we understand, for instance, we're given your q as 1. You put the q as 1 there, our price will be 10 minus 2, meaning our price here will be what? 8. Our b is already our slope here, which is -2. So using this formula, the inverse demand will be 1 over -2. The price we calculated is what? 8. The quantity we're given is 1. So here we're going to have 8 over -2. Our answer is -4. So here, demand is elastic. I repeat, if we're given an inverse demand function like this one here, so we first identify what is our b. Our b is the slope here, which is -2. And what is our p? We've been given as 1. We put 1 in there, we get the b as 8. Then we substitute in this function. That is how we get our elasticity, which is -4. And this is elastic demand. So if we're given our demand function in terms of the direct demand function, for instance, 10 minus 2p, and our p here maybe has been given as what? 4. Or it has been given as 3. So meaning our b, we can tell this already what? -2 there. And what is our q? When we put a p there, 3, it will be 10 minus 6. Our q will be what? 10 minus 6, which is what? Where there's p, we put a 3. So 10 minus 6 will give us a 4. So elasticity of demand for a direct demand function is not 1 over b, but simply b over price times quantity. So where there is b, we put -2. Where there's a price, we put a 3. Where there's quantity, we calculated 4. So this is -6 over 4, which will get -1.5. So this is still elastic. So demand here is what? Elastic. Are we following? Are we moving together?
Yes.
All right. So demand can also be given in a multilinear way, where we're given a 10 there, minus 2px, minus 3, plus 3py, plus 10m. So this is good x. We call that on-price elasticity of demand. This is good y. It's crossing from good y to good x to good y. It's cross-price elasticity. Then this is income. We'll be given maybe the price of good x is 4 kwacha. The price of good y maybe is 1 kwacha. In the income, maybe given as 5 kwacha. So what is the quantity of this good? So we just substitute the values there. Where there is price of good x, we put a 4. Where there's price of good y, we put a 1. And where there's income, we put a 5. So here we're going to simply have 10 minus 8 plus 3 plus 50. But in this case, we're going to have 10 minus 8 is a 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 50 is 55. That is a quantity. And they ask you, find on-price elasticity. It's also called the price elasticity of demand. Now, price elasticity of demand is simply within the same product. It's moving from good X to good X. So it's simply the gradient for good X times the price for good X over the quantity. Everything's about X. It's called on-price elasticity or price elasticity of demand. So what was the gradient for good X? It is -2. What was the price for good X? It was 4 kwacha. And what was the quantity? It was 55. You can put a 1 there if you want. So -2 times 4, it is -8. 1 times 55, it is 55. So when you compute that, you're simply going to get 8 divided by 55. So we get -0.145. So here demand is what? Inelastic. How about if you're moving from good X to good Y? It is called cross price elasticity. Cross price elasticity. So this is crossing. So we change the color. Just cross price elasticity. We're moving elasticity from X to good Y. We're going to look at the gradient for good Y, then the price for good Y over the quantity for good X. So it's moving from X to Y. So what is the gradient for good Y? It is 3. The price for good Y was 1/4. Then our quantity for good X was 55. So here we're going to have 3 over 55. Remember, for cross price elasticity, we're only interested in the sign. If it's a negative, it's a complementary good. If it's a positive, it's a substitute good. So 3 divided by 55 will give us 3 divided by what? 55 be 0.05. So cross price elasticity was 0.05. Means this is what? A substitute good. You can also tell that the substitute good, the signs are different here if they're opposing each other. The substitute good. If there was negative there and negative there, you tell that these are complementing each other. They're complementary goods. Then we go to income elasticity. EM. It's the gradient for the income times the actual income over the quantity of good X. So here, what was the gradient for the income here? The slope for the income was what? 10. So put a 10 there. And what was the price for income? 5 over the quantity here, which is 55. So here we're going to have 50 divided by 55, which will be 0.9 somewhere there. So what is 50 over 55? It's 0.90 or 0.91. So since we have a positive answer there, income elasticity means that it is a normal good. It is a normal good. If we got negative, it means be an inferior good. So we defined the 3 types of goods in terms of elasticity and in terms of their nature. So there are a lot of types of goods and examples that can follow. So what are the different types of goods that we've mentioned? What are the different types of goods that we've mentioned? And gave examples where possible. So we mentioned that there is a normal good and an inferior good under income elasticity. So a normal good is simply a good which we demand more of as our income goes up. It has a positive income elasticity. Examples may include clothing, electronics, vacations. Inferior goods are goods which we demand less of as our income increases. They have a negative elasticity of income. Examples are second-hand clothes, which we call generic clothes. Public transport, you now have to use your own car. Substitute goods are simply goods which can be used as alternatives to another. Examples could be Pepsi, cola, butter, margarine, tea, coffee. These ones usually have a positive cross-price elasticity of demand. Income has 2 kinds of goods, inferior or normal goods. Cross-price has 2 types of goods, complementary goods and what? Substitute goods. Are we following? I need you to get these concepts here. In economics, you don't know, you cannot guess. All right. So just to give you backing of the notes. So the normal goods are goods which we demand. As income increases, we demand more of them. They have a positive elasticity of demand. Examples, as I mentioned, inferior goods are goods for which we decrease their consumption as our income goes up. For instance, Salaula, black and white TV, public transport. Substitute goods are goods which we have alternatives for. When the price of a substitute increases, the demand for the substitute will also increase, so they have a positive elasticity of demand. Complementary goods are goods that are consumed together. They have a negative cross-price elasticity, meaning increase in the price of one complementary will result in a decrease in the demand for the other. Example would be gas for cars, which is petrol, and the cars, computers and software, hot dogs and buns. So these are called what? Complementary goods. Are we getting somewhere? We also have other types of goods that we can also maybe add to the list, but these are the most important. All right. Other types of goods could include luxurious goods, essential goods, public goods, private goods. So luxury goods are goods that are not essential for survival. The elasticity is higher than 1. So luxury goods often are more elastic than income. So increasing your income will proportionally increase your demand for them, like designer clothes, luxury clothes. Necessities are goods that are essential for survival. The elasticity of income is below 1. They're required regardless of the changes in income. Examples: food, water, and electricity. Different goods are goods that are rare type of inferior goods, where we demand increases as their price increases. So these are a rare type of inferior goods where the demand increases as their price increases. This is due to the unique circumstances, such as limited alternatives or extreme income constraints. Given goods are often commonly relatively uncommon in practice. So examples could be unlimited. We can talk about given goods depending on where you come from. Others say given goods could be carpenter, others potatoes and rice. So this study is still ongoing. And we also have substitute goods. These are simply goods that are non-excludable to free riding, where everyone can consume. You can't avoid somebody from enjoying it. They're usually provided by the federal government, like public roads, public parks. Private goods are also goods that are excludable, where you could provide for certain individuals, like private schools, private cars, clothing, etc. So these are the types of goods that you must get to know of. Are we together? Are we following? All right. So what are some of the determinants of elasticity of demand? So we have number of close substitutes available, importance of the commodity, the habits that the consumers have. For instance, tobacco is a die-hard alcohol. So demand for such goods is inelastic. The number of users available, the time factor, so elasticity varies.
Someone shout.
Is that a question? All right. So cross-price elasticity, I've explained to you what it is all about and how to calculate it. Are there any questions at this point? Please ask now or forever hold your peace.